In the early morning quietness, a thick blanket of cold dust and wood smoke hangs heavily over the valley of Kabul, blurring the outlines of the rugged mountains that encircle the capital. As the very first pale rays of the sun cut through the haze, the city slowly groans to life. The faint, rhythmic sound of a metal shutter opening down the street echoes through the thin walls of a small mud brick house on the city's outskirts. Inside, Ahmad quietly counts the remaining pieces of traditional flatbread left on his kitchen table. There are exactly 3 pieces of bread, but he has 4 young children sleeping under the heavy blankets in the next room. He looks at their peaceful faces for a brief moment, whispering a silent prayer that one day his oldest son might become a doctor and his daughters might simply be allowed to walk into a university lecture hall without fear. But right now, dreams are a heavy luxury. He puts on his worn-out wool jacket, steps outside into the biting, freezing morning air, and begins his long walk toward the main traffic square. He isn't going to a stable job. He is going to stand on a crowded, dusty street corner alongside hundreds of other desperate men, freezing in the wind, hoping against hope that a construction truck will pull up and pick him for a single day of backbreaking labor that pays less than $4. This is the raw, daily reality for millions of families across Afghanistan. For decades, the outside world has viewed this ancient land through the lens of geopolitics and military budgets, ignoring the complex human lives trapped inside. Why is it that after trillions of dollars spent in endless political promises, a normal life remains a luxury that millions here simply cannot afford? To find the answer, we must step past the political noise and look directly into the beating, resilient heart of everyday Afghanistan. To truly understand why life in Afghanistan feels like a relentless, uphill battle, you have to look at the very ground the people walk on and the environment they must endure. This is a landlocked nation defined by its harsh, unforgiving geography, dominated by the towering, snow-capped peaks of the Hindu Kush, which split the country into isolated valleys and remote provinces. The weather here is a seasonal test of survival. In the summer, the heat is blistering and dry, parching the agricultural plains, drying up ancient water wells, and triggering severe droughts that ruin crops and drive farmers to bankruptcy year after year. But it is the winter that brings the true test. When winter arrives, temperatures in places like Kabul and Bamiyan drop well below freezing, and heavy snow blocks the critical mountain passes, cutting off entire rural villages for medical care, emergency food supplies, and the rest of the world for months at a time. In the cities, infrastructure is a constant daily crisis. Electricity is a rare commodity. The power grid is unreliable, often leaving neighborhoods plunged into darkness for 18 to 20 hours a day, forcing families to rely on expensive, polluting diesel generators or small solar panels if they can afford them. Water is an even greater challenge. There is no centralized indoor plumbing system for the majority of citizens. Every single morning, you can see lines of young boys and girls carrying heavy blue plastic jerrycans, walking long distances to the nearest communal hand pump to carry clean drinking water back to their homes, step by agonizing step. But this is only part of the story. The economic pressure inside these walls is suffocating. Today, the average monthly income for an Afghan household has plummeted to less than $35. To put that in perspective, a single family-sized flatbread costs about 15 to 20 cents, a tiny amount to the outside world, but a major expense when you have multiple mouths to feed every single day. When winter hits, the cost of a single bag of coal or firewood to heat a home rises to nearly $40, forcing families to choose between freezing in the dark or skipping meals for weeks. Yet, if you step into the bustling Shurnal market or the ancient bird market of Kafaroshi in Kabul, your senses are instantly overwhelmed by a different side of Afghanistan. The air is alive with the rich smell of roasted saffron, grilled lamb kebabs, and freshly baked bolani bread. The streets are a chaotic, vibrant symphony of sounds. The shouts of teenage vendors selling plastic bags, the calls of fruit merchants displaying bright red pomegranates, and the constant, aggressive honking of old yellow taxis navigating deeply potholed, unpaved roads. This is where the core of Afghan culture reveals itself, an unbreakable spirit of community and a deep tradition of hospitality. Despite their immense poverty, the concept of welcoming a guest is a sacred law. If you walk into an Afghan home as a total stranger, they will immediately roll out their finest traditional wool carpets, place large embroidered cushions against the walls for you, and brew their very last pinch of green tea mixed with cardamom. They will willingly serve you their best food, even if it means the family will have nothing left to eat for the next day, because showing honor to a guest is a fundamental pillar of their dignity. For ordinary Afghans, however, the story looks very different depending on your age and gender. Inside these homes, life revolves around the extended family, with 3 or 4 generations often living together under one roof, because survival depends on collective effort. A typical day for an Afghan child is vastly different from that of a child anywhere else. Instead of playing video games or going to sports practice, a young boy's day often involves waking up before dawn to help his father in a small workshop, or roaming the busy streets with a small metal tin of smoking wild rose seeds, waving the smoke over drivers for a few coins of tip money. For young girls, the day is spent quietly inside the house, helping their mothers wash clothes by hand, bake bread in clay ovens, and take care of younger siblings. Education has become a quiet, dangerous battleground. While young boys sit in freezing, overcrowded classrooms with broken windows and no textbooks, their teenage sisters are barred from formal secondary schools. Yet, their hunger for knowledge cannot be suppressed. Across the country, thousands of young girls secretly walk through alleyways to attend hidden, underground home classes, whispering their math equations and literature lessons in dark rooms, constantly watching the door out of fear that authorities might discover their secret school. Every single day, ordinary Afghans are forced to solve a brutal, exhausting puzzle: how to pay for wood to heat their home, how to get clean water, and how to buy flour when the economic system around them has collapsed. This difficult modern reality did not appear out of nowhere. It was painstakingly and violently carved by decades of turbulent history and foreign interference. To understand how Afghanistan became so fragile, we must look back to the era before 1979. There was a time when Afghanistan was a peaceful, developing nation on a steady path toward modernization. In the 1960s and early 1970s, Kabul was known as the Paris of Central Asia. It was a vibrant cultural hub where university students, both men and women, walked through modern streets in Western clothing, where tourists from all over the world traveled freely along the hippie trail, and where a constitutional monarchy was successfully building roads, factories, and international diplomatic relations. It was a flawed but stable country with a bright, hopeful future. However, because of its strategic geographic location as the crossroads of Central Asia, sitting directly between the Middle East, Russia, and British India, it has historically been a prime target for foreign empires. This modern golden era was shattered by 5 major turning points that derailed the nation's history. The first catastrophic turning point arrived in December 1979 with the Soviet invasion. Almost overnight, the Soviet Union sent tanks and thousands of troops into Afghanistan to support a communist government, turning a developing country into a brutal, bloody Cold War proxy battleground. For a decade, rural villages were bombed. Millions of Afghans fled across borders as refugees, and the country's fragile agricultural and economic institutions were systematically torn down. The reality, however, was about to become even more complicated. The second turning point was the chaotic civil war of the early 1990s. When the Soviet troops finally retreated in defeat, a devastating power vacuum opened up immediately. The various Mujahideen factions turned their weapons on each other, fighting street by street for control of the capital. This dark period reduced once beautiful cities to mountains of rubble and erased the remaining structures of a central government. This chaos and lawlessness led directly to the third turning point, the first rise of the Taliban in the mid-1990s. Emerging from religious schools in the south, the Taliban promised to bring law, order, and Islamic security to a population that was deeply exhausted by years of civil war. The people initially accepted them just to have peace, but the country quickly found itself under a strict, fundamentalist regime. Under their rule, television was banned, music was outlawed, and women were removed from public life, isolating Afghanistan from the modern international community. The fourth major turning point occurred in October 2001, following the tragic September 11th terrorist attacks. A massive Western military intervention, led by the United States, quickly removed the Taliban from power for harboring al-Qaeda. This ushered in a 20-year era of democratic experimentation. Billions of dollars in foreign aid poured into the country. New high-rises were built, telecommunication networks expanded, and an entire generation of women re-entered universities and workplaces. However, while major cities saw a rapid development, the vast rural heartland stayed trapped in an endless, bloody crossfire between insurgents and foreign forces. Then, everything changed again in 2021. The fifth and final turning point struck like a lightning bolt in August 2021. The sudden, rapid withdrawal of United States forces led to the immediate collapse of the Afghan government and the return of the Taliban to power. The consequences for ordinary citizens were instant and devastating. The international financial system immediately shut its doors to Afghanistan. The country's central bank assets were frozen abroad, billions of dollars in foreign aid vanished overnight, and the formal economy went into sudden cardiac arrest. The Afghanistan we see today was shaped by these 5 violent turning points, leaving an exhausted population to constantly pick up the pieces of broken political experiments. Today, the economic and social landscape of Afghanistan resembles a ship navigating a violent storm without a working compass. To put the current economic crisis into perspective, consider a few stark comparisons that show the deep poverty of the nation. The average income of an Afghan family has dropped so low that the country's GDP per capita is now among the lowest on the entire planet, sitting at a mere fraction of what people earn in neighboring developing countries like Uzbekistan, Pakistan, or Iran. A young person entering the job market in Kabul today is 3 times less likely to find a stable job than a youth in neighboring Islamabad. And due to the collapse of public nutrition and sanitation, the average life expectancy in Afghanistan is nearly a decade shorter than the global average. The national economy is essentially running on life support, crippled by international sanctions that block local merchants from using the global banking system, making it nearly impossible to import basic goods or receive money from relatives abroad. But this economic collapse has triggered an even quieter catastrophe in the healthcare system. The country's healthcare system is under enormous pressure. Hundreds of public clinics and hospitals have run out of basic supplies, leaving doctors to perform surgeries using flashlight apps on their phones during power outages. There's a critical shortage of essential medicines, from basic antibiotics to cancer treatments, forcing patients to buy expired drugs from the black market. Because female medical students have been barred from completing their training, the country is facing a serious shortage of female doctors and midwives, meaning thousands of pregnant women in rural areas have no access to professional maternal care. Yet, despite these institutional roadblocks, life is actively finding a way to break through the cracks of isolation. The country is experiencing a quiet, digital resilience driven by a tech-savvy generation that refuses to give up on their future. Walk into the small, unmarked co-working spaces or private rooms in Herat and Kabul, and you'll find young Afghans using high-speed VPNs to bypass restrictions and access global freelance markets. These young programmers, graphic designers, and data analysts are working for international clients, earning digital currency to secretly bring vital income back to their families. The domestic markets are also fighting to stay alive. Local trade in fresh fruits, walnuts, saffron, and the country's famous hand-woven carpets continues to move forward, providing a thin financial lifeline for thousands of small shopkeepers and independent traders. The social dynamic has also shifted in an unexpected way since 2021. For the first time in over 40 years, the active frontline warfare, suicide bombings, and sudden airstrikes that define daily life have dropped significantly. This newfound, fragile domestic security has created an unexpected economic window. For decades, farmers could not tend to their fields and truck drivers could not travel between cities without the constant, terrifying fear of being blown up or ambushed by armed groups. Today, commercial trucks can finally transport goods across remote provinces at night without paying bribes to multiple warlords, and farmers can cultivate their fields in peace, allowing local agriculture to slowly breathe again. Simultaneously, a notable social shift is happening inside Afghan homes. Because women are officially barred from working in government offices, non-governmental organizations, and corporations, they have created a powerful, silent underground economy. Thousands of resilient Afghan women have transformed their private living rooms into mini startups, running secret home-based tailoring businesses, carpet weaving cooperatives, and online beauty or tutoring services. They manage their businesses through mobile phones, using WhatsApp and Telegram groups to coordinate orders, market their products, and manage deliveries through trusted male relatives. The telecommunications sector has expanded, with mobile phone ownership and basic internet access reaching even remote valleys. It is a highly restricted, heavily monitored, and fragile kind of economic survival. But for a population that has known nothing but violent explosions for 4 decades, this quietness is a vital foundation they are determined to use to keep their society from dissolving. When we look toward the long-term horizon, the true wealth and destiny of Afghanistan do not lie in its political regimes or foreign aid packages, but in its untapped domestic potential. The country possesses a powerful asset for development, its demographics. Over 60% of the Afghan population is under the age of 25. This represents a remarkably young, resilient, and inherently driven generation that has grown up in the digital age. They do not want to fight wars. They want to build businesses, learn coding, and connect with the global community. Furthermore, beneath the rugged, rocky mountains of Afghanistan lies a significant mineral treasure chest. Geologists estimate that the country sits on top of nearly $3 trillion worth of untapped mineral reserves, including deposits of copper, iron, gold, and most importantly, vast veins of lithium, the essential raw material that the modern green energy world needs for electric vehicle batteries. If Afghanistan can maintain internal stability, its geopolitical role in the region could transform over the next 10 to 20 years. The nation sits at the perfect geographic intersection to act as a transport land bridge, connecting the energy-rich nations of Central Asia, like Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan, with the large, energy-hungry markets of Pakistan and India through proposed regional pipelines and railway corridors. Realizing this potential, however, depends on how the country navigates its internal social crises and its international relationships. Right now, a major risk is deeper economic isolation if the government continues to deny basic human rights. Of course, nothing will happen overnight, and the road to turning this untapped potential into actual stability will be long and painful. But even in the face of these heavy restrictions, there's a wave of hope. The collective hunger for education among the youth has found an escape route through the digital world. Thousands of young Afghan women are bypassing restrictions by enrolling in international online academies, using cheap, smuggled smartphones late at night to study computer science, global business administration, and healthcare from professors in the United States and Europe. Small local enterprises are slowly expanding their supply chains to regional markets in Dubai and Central Asia. In the best-case scenario, for the next 20 years, Afghanistan could slowly evolve into a self-sufficient, neutral trading hub, powered by its mineral wealth and its educated youth. The future of this ancient land will not be decided by foreign political declarations. It will be built by the sheer, stubborn willpower of these ordinary citizens who are actively finding creative ways to educate themselves, sustain their communities, and rebuild their nation from the ground up. Ultimately, Afghanistan is far more than a tragic headline, a political talking point, or a global symbol of endless war. It is a living, breathing nation of resilient fathers who wake up every single morning into the freezing dust to chase a better future for their families. Brave young women who refuse to let their minds be silenced by decrees, and bright-eyed children who still laugh, play in the dirt, and fly colorful kites high above the ancient mountains of Kabul. Their story is a powerful, undeniable testament to the ultimate endurance of the human spirit. When you strip away the layers of international politics, military conflicts, and economic sanctions, you are left with a beautiful, stubborn human truth. The simple desire to work, to learn, and to live a peaceful, normal life is a flame that no amount of tragic history can ever truly extinguish. Afghanistan continues to endure, waiting for the day when a normal life is no longer a miracle, but a reality for everyone. Every nation has a story. Every border shapes lives.